And so that brings me to this next piece of the equation. And that is that, just by way of example, I hope I can make this clear to myself and to all of you. You know, sometimes we go, like you're having some kind of issue, like you're sneezing a lot or something, or you're getting a fever, so you go to a doctor, right? And the doctor, of course, knows the human body, they know medicine, they do a checkup, and they say, I think you have this or that or the other, right? They check you out and they say, I think you have a, bacterial infection, or you have a virus, or you have allergies, or whatever they tell you, right? But is it possible that the diagnosis of the doctor is incorrect? Happens all the time, right? They didn't check for some other things, so they didn't look at your liver, and they only looked at your heart rate or something, and they never even discovered that the problem was somewhere else, right? So sometimes what happens is we look at one thing and we don't realize there's some other things happening that may be related. Like, for example, to give you, even from the medical world, even though I am not a medical professional by any stretch of the imagination, but just as an example, there could be somebody who's having heart trouble or blood pressure problems, right? But the advice they get is about changing their diet, or they get advice about, maybe some procedure. But maybe one of the root causes is a lot of stress at home, or a lot of arguments. And because of the stress and the anxiety, blood pressure and heart rate are being disturbed. So there's something psychological happening that's affecting something physical. That may be the case. But sometimes we only look at one side of the problem. We don't look at all sides of the problem to diagnose what's really going on. Now let's take that outside of the medical profession. You go to somebody that you need advice from, or somebody gives you advice. They look at you and they say, I think you're having a problem, let me give you some advice. And in your head, you're saying to yourself, man, you're giving me this advice, but you don't really know me. You don't know the whole situation. You don't know everything else that's going on. You're just giving me this advice thinking that you've understood the problem. You don't understand the whole problem. You don't even know the whole picture. And even if you explain the whole picture to them, sometimes you try to explain the full picture to them before they try to give you advice. Even after hearing that, they don't understand it the way you would want them to. And they still give you advice that you say, I don't think you really understand what I'm going through, even though I've tried to explain it to you. You understand? So even when somebody tries to give us advice sometimes, it may not be based on full knowledge of what we're actually experiencing. And that can become frustrating because, they're not getting where we're coming from. Another, example of that is even ourselves. If you're in a problem situation, your mind tells you to get out of that problem a certain way, right? You tell yourself, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. But whatever you tell yourself, because you're in that situation, you're stressed out, you have anxiety, you have anger, you have whatever other frustration, what you tell yourself at that time, if you were completely calm, you would give yourself different advice, wouldn't you? Or if you took the time to think about it, you would consider other factors that you didn't consider at the time. In other words, even when we diagnose ourselves, even when we give ourselves advice, it's biased. We can't even give neutral, fully considered advice to even ourselves. We're not even capable of that. And so I keep coming back to the idea of advice. The doctor giving you impartial advice possibly, a friend, a family member giving you partial advice, you yourself giving yourself biased and partial advice. The reason I'm sharing all of this with you is, is because when Allah says that He knows everything, and then He says that He advises us, okay? قَدْ جَاءَتْكُمْ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. Counsel, advice has come to you from your Master. Quran, Allah says about Himself, وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah is teaching you, وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah knows everything. Allah is knowledgeable of everything. You know what that means? That means that He understands your situation completely, even better than you and I can understand our own situation. He recognizes our problem, our feelings, our thoughts, the thoughts we have said, the thoughts nobody has ever known that are going on in our head. Sometimes something's going on in your head, your face looks a little disturbed, your husband or wife or son or daughter turns to you and says, what's wrong? And you say, nothing, even though everything's going on. You just say nothing, because they can't handle it. But Allah knows that nothing is something. He knows exactly what it is. And knowing all of that, He gives advice. Knowing all of that. It's kind of unfair sometimes that we think the Quran is there to give us religious advice. The doctor will give us medical advice. The mechanic will give us car advice. The accountant is going to give us financial advice. And Quran will give us what? Religious advice. But Allah is not limited to religion. Allah's knowledge is knowledge of all things in your life. Everything that's going on inside you. Everything that is for your best physically, everything that's for your best financially, everything that's best for you socially, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, in terms of your health, everything that because all of that is Allah's making. And He made you and me. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Doesn't He know who He created? After knowing us completely, He gave this advice. So this advice is not just one angle, you see. It's not just one point of view. Human beings can only see things from one point of view. Allah sees all points of view. Allah sees all points of view. And that's why, Allah Azza wa Jalla is the, لا يدركه الأبصار. Eyes cannot perceive Him, but He can see through all the eyes, He says. يدركه الأبصار. He perceives all vision, all perspectives. So it's not like your perspective is something Allah didn't take into consideration. Your situation is something, sometimes people hear advice from Allah's book, or you even contemplate advice from Allah's book and you say, yeah, this is good religious stuff, but my situation is special, it doesn't apply to me. Because, you don't know my full circumstance. Yeah, I don't know your full circumstance. Somebody else doesn't know your full circumstance. Allah certainly does. Allah certainly does. And He gave this advice to humanity, knowing every single human being and all of their problems and all of their needs put together.